Homemade pastry is deceptively simple to make. We'll show you how to make an easy, delicious short crust pastry to use in any of your favourite pie recipes. There are just 4 ingredients in a basic pastry recipe: flour, fat such as butter or lard, water and salt. Step 1. Combine the dry ingredients. Combine the flour and salt in a mixing bowl in the portions called for by your pastry recipe. Step 2. Cut in the fat. Some of the best pastry is made with a combination of fats, half butter for a rich flavour and half lard for a wonderful flakiness. You can experiment to see which fat or combination of fats you like the best. Slice the cold fat into small pieces before you add it into the flour and salt. Use a pastry cutter or 2 knives to work the fat into the flour, turning the bowl and scraping the flour into the centre as you go. Work the fat into the flour until the clumps are the size of small peas. These little bits of fat will form air pockets as the pastry bakes, making it beautifully flaky. Step 3. Add liquid. Sprinkle the fat, salt, flour mixture with a little ice water, 1 tablespoon at a time. After each tablespoon, mix in the water gently with a fork. Don't add too much liquid, you don't want a sticky dough. Start with the minimum amount called for in the recipe you're using. The mixture might look dry and crumbly after you add the liquid, but don't add more. Instead, test the dough by picking up a handful and squeezing. If it sticks together, it's perfect. If it's still too crumbly, add another half a tablespoon of liquid, lightly toss the mixture and test again. Avoid overworking the dough so you don't end up with tough pastry. Step 4. Refrigerate. The pastry needs to rest in the fridge, allowing it to relax and making it easier to work with. Transfer the pastry to a resealable plastic bag. Working from the outside of the bag, squeeze the pastry into a flat disc shape. If you've made enough pastry for 2 whole sheets, divide the dough in half and place them into separate bags, flattening each into a disc. Squeeze the air out of each bag and refrigerate the pastry for 1 hour. Step 5. Roll out the pastry. You'll need a rolling pin. A simple one will do the trick. Remove the disc of pastry from the fridge and place it on the floured work surface. Flatten the disc slightly with your hands and dust the top lightly with flour. Dust the rolling pin with flour to help keep the pastry from sticking. Place your rolling pin across the centre of the pastry and begin to roll outwards from the middle. Here's the trick to rolling out pastry in a circle. Rotate the pastry 90 degrees after every roll. Continue rolling and rotating the pastry until it's less than 5 mm or 1/4 inch in thickness. To see if your pastry circle is big enough for your pie dish, place the dish upside down on the circle. Step 6. Place the pastry in the dish. Gently fold the pastry in half. If it's very pliable, you can fold it into quarters. This makes an easy to transfer packet of pastry. Carefully transfer the folded pastry to the pie dish and position the point of the folded circle right at the centre of the dish. Unfold the dough and gently press it into the dish. If the pastry cracks or tears, don't worry, it's easy to fix. Just wet your fingers with a little water and press the pastry back together. Step 7. Trim the edges. Use a paring knife or kitchen scissors to trim the pastry that hangs over the outer edge of the dish. Leave about 2.5 cm or 1 inch overhang. Crimp the edges if you're not covering the pie with a lid. If you're using a lid, roll out the other half of the pastry so it's about 2.5 cm or 1 inch wider in diameter than the pie dish. Transfer it carefully to a baking tray that's lined with baking parchment. Cover it all with cling film and chill for at least 30 minutes. Now that you've prepared your pastry case, you can continue with your pie, tart or quiche recipe and fill it up and bake it. Once you've mastered the basics of pastry making, you can change the flavours and textures using different flours, liquids and fats. That's it. Here's a recap.